All right, welcome everyone. So happy to see you. I see more folks dropping in. So welcome to our Scanning Pens webinar. Happy that you're here today. As a few more folks drop in, I will take care of some housekeeping. It's 3:02 right now. We want to thank you for joining us today. I know how busy you are, especially at this time of year. So thank you for giving us some time. I think you'll be very happy with the presentation today. Our guest today is Elizabeth Begley, and I will introduce her in a second. I want you to know that we are recording today's session, so you will receive a recording afterwards, and if you have to drop off for some reason, or if you want to watch later, you'll be able to do that with the recording. There will also be a certificate of attendance, but we do not offer CEUs for today, but you will have a certificate of attendance for a 1-hour webinar. We will have a copy of the slides sent to you as well, and some additional articles that Elizabeth and I thought were relevant to speech teachers in particular, just about the use of text-to-speech and support for your students with dyslexia. So those things will all be coming towards you today. All right, thank you everyone. I'm so happy to know where you're from. Thanks for chiming in. I am Kristen Kohler. I'm the Director of Education here at Scanning Pens. I'm also here with my colleague, Brian Patterson. Stay tuned till the end. He's going to talk to you for just a moment about the pen when Elizabeth finishes up. On this slide here, you will see our email addresses, our social media, and our website, and we'll show you all that information at the end, as well as at the end, I'll give you a bit.ly so that you can access the slides. So that'll be easy for you to get to if you don't want to wait for the email. All right. Without further ado, I am going to go ahead and introduce Elizabeth Begley. She is a speech-language pathologist and an augmentative and alternative communications specialist. She has worked with a spectrum of students from little kids to adults, so she brings a wealth of experience to the talk today. And I want to encourage all of you to drop questions in the chat. When we get to the end, we will answer as many as we can. I am really looking forward to hearing from Elizabeth. Thank you, Elizabeth. How are you today?
I'm great, thank you. And I'm not going to actually look at the chat. I'm going to try and stay focused on the slides, but a quick shout out to a student from Ithaca College who is on and gave me her new name versus her maiden name. And Sarah, thanks for joining us today. All right, so can we go to I can go to the next slide all by myself. Here we go. So I would call this talk How to Support Your Language Goals and Vocabulary Development with Text-to-Speech. My name is Elizabeth or Liz Begley. I am in College Station, Texas. And I first of all want to say thank you so much for attending today. I realize that it is May, from the end of probably the most difficult year professionally and possibly personally for each one of you. It certainly has been for me. And I'm pretty touched that anybody in May is thinking ahead for how can we continue to support our kids next year, who are probably struggling even more with language and reading and writing than they were before the pandemic. So the fact that you're giving up an hour of your time when you could be doing almost anything else to learn about a new tool for your toolbox is kudos to you. And so happy Teacher Appreciation Week. I saw that from Teachers Pay Teachers this morning. I didn't know. And also Better Speech Language Pathologist. Administrators out there, thanks for being here. So, let me see if I get to the next slide. That, nope. So although this is not offered for ASHA CEUs, I have put in things that ASHA requires, and so I could actually go ahead and use this or record this with the certificate that you get and the handout. So I'm including financial and non-financial disclosures and also learner objectives for you. So,
hey, Elizabeth.
Yes.
You're breaking up just a bit on the audio, so I'm just going to You're all good now. You're good. But if it happens again, I'll pop on and maybe, just talk slowly and you're good to go.
Great. Thank you, Kristen. And Kristen knows I'm a big tech person, so I had my husband turn off all his devices. I have every single device and my phone turned off, but we are in the middle of a storm and a big storm. So that may create problems. But at any rate, what I was saying is disclosures. I have one financial disclosure. The ReaderPen, which is right here, is on long-term loan for me from Scanning Pen. Sorry for the typo. That should be long-term loan. And I have no non-financial disclosures with the company to report. Okay. And a little bit about my background. I'm a speech-language pathologist and augmentative and alternative communication specialist. I have a private practice here in Texas. And as part of that, I'm actually an independent provider for Talk Path Live. So I have been doing online therapy for a couple years, but definitely for all of you that jumped into it in April or May of last year, it is not an easy transition. So there's that to thank all of you for. From 1999 to 2009, I was a clinical assistant professor at Ithaca College in Ithaca, New York. There I taught a graduate AAC course and the undergraduate speech and language disabilities in educational settings, which is near and dear to my heart. I also ran the Assistive Technology lab at Ithaca College, which I set up and was able to set up a similar lab in College Station Medical Center when I moved here. And the College Station Medical Center is now St. Joseph's Hospital. And in terms of public school experience, I've worked in public schools as a speech-language pathologist in California, where I got my undergrad and grad degree, Massachusetts, New York, and Texas. And so I've been in a lot of classrooms. I've worked with a lot of fabulous teachers and OTs and administrators and other speech-language pathologists. And any hospital-based SLP who thinks schools are easy has not set foot in a school in a very, very long time. Your caseloads are complex. They're across the scope of practice. You have more paperwork than hospital therapists. And so both jobs are very rewarding, but I have to say that school-based therapists really rock. So that's that. Oh, and since moving to Texas, I got to play a lot more tennis than I did in Ithaca, where we have 90 inches of snow. So this is me from last week at a tennis tournament in a town called Georgetown, not Washington State, near Washington, but Georgetown, Texas, in a tennis tournament. All right, so here are our learner objectives for today. The first one is that I want you to be able to identify 3 or more key features of the ReaderPen, which has text-to-speech capability, to develop curriculum-based language goals that incorporate text-to-speech support, and to list at least 2 or more language activities that can be enhanced or improved with text-to-speech support for struggling readers. And at the end of the presentation, I have these same 3 slides with those answers to those 3 learner objectives to make sure that what I say I'm going to cover in this slide is covered by the time we're breaking up. All right, so let's just start with a couple definitions. I know you all use text-to-speech, but it never hurts to have a reminder of what the specific definition is. So text-to-speech is a form of assistive technology, or AT, that enables text to be converted into synthesized speech. And it can be added to an IEP for struggling readers. And text-to-speech voices can be male or female, young or old, and even accented. So I know there's an Aussie accent now, there's a British accent, there's even Texas accent, depending on which text-to-speech software system you're using. And it's the critical component of speech generating devices for all you SLPs out there. It's really what made it possible for individuals who are nonverbal to create novel utterances, which is really at the heart of language. And it's the scanning pens so that bring that text-to-speech technology to paper, to books, tests. I'm going to use some therapy cards and games today. So everything that is in a computer or speech-generating device is now kind of accessible to things on paper with the reading pen. So the corollary to text to speech is speech to text or speech recognition. So that's also a form of assistive technology, and it can be added to an IEP for struggling writers. And just like listening and speaking go hand in hand, reading and writing also go hand in hand, and the four of them are so interrelated. So sometimes it's referred to as voice recognition, and I suspect all of you have used it on your phone. When you don't feel like using the keyboard, maybe you're driving and you say, "Hey Siri, text Michelle," and then Siri might ask you, you have two Michelles, and you can pick the Michelle, or if you only have a special Michelle, and you say, send a text, tell her to pick up veggie pizza for dinner. And then Siri will translate your voice into text and will repeat it back to you and ask you if you want to send it. So if you've used that, you use text to speech. Originally, it was actually developed to help insurance processors that were spending all day on the keyboard writing out insurance claims, and they were at very high risk for carpal tunnel. And the first speech recognition program was called Dragon Dictate, and you had to spend about 3 to 5 hours reading into it so Dragon could learn your speech patterns and translate them into speech. Nowadays, you just pick up text to speech and start talking. And because it's going on to the web and using the web as a source, you don't have to train text to speech at all, which is great. Again, text to speech is speech to text or speech recognition is used to support writing independence for individuals with spinal cord injury and lower motor neuron disease. So both forms of technology have been really critically helpful for people with disabilities. So for many of you, you might not have seen the reading pen before, and I want to show you a just quick 4-minute video from the website of Reading Pen because I think it shows you the best case scenario of using the pen. So, yep, go ahead and let's start it. Thanks, Kristen.
New York City consists of approximately 1.1 million students. We're the largest public district in the country. Education students. As a special education teacher, you come across students that have a variety of different needs. Some students need things read to them, some students need things written out or directions read differently. We gave the students various questions about do they like reading, is reading difficult for them, do they like to read on their own, do they like to be read to, and they all answered quite honestly.
No student wants to have to raise their hands.
It comes a point, no matter how comfortable they are in the classroom, that they do feel embarrassed to ask again.
It is hard to always meet the needs of all my students when they need help.
We want our students to have access, all students to have access to their curriculum. And what was amazing about this partnership is it was a great, wonderful collaboration between the teachers and the Speech and Language Department, where we really were able to show the school how, through the use of assistive technology, we can address our literacy initiatives.
While sometimes we can recommend some very intricate pieces of technology, the ReaderPen is more simple, and so it can be integrated more easily into the classroom. It allows them to use the educational materials such as regular textbooks and reading books that their peers are using.
So many of the students have not only built up the confidence but also are becoming more independent. The classroom with the headphones next to them, they grab their headphones and they get started with the morning work.
What I like most about the reader pens is they're like a highlighter, and they highlight and they can read for you, because in reading sometimes we get stuck on a word and we need help, so the reader pens helps me to understand the word and the definition.
Vocabulary is a really big piece across the district that we really have been working on throughout speech and language therapy, and I really think that the reader pen is a wonderful tool. Anytime they come across a difficult word, instead of asking me what it means, they use their pen to scan it and they move on. It frees me up and it lets us get further through the lesson because I don't have to pre-teach the vocabulary anymore.
I like using the reader pen more than raising my hand during class, because when you scan it, the answer's right there.
I had one session of introducing the pens and their features. There was a small learning curve, but they picked up on it pretty fast and were even showing me how to use certain features in the pen that I didn't even know how to use. I can now spend my time with the whole class and engaging my students in more meaningful discussion and reading comprehension. Students who normally didn't understand the text fully, reading it independently with the use of the reader pen, can now understand the text, and I can see the smiles on their face when they are proud to raise their hand up high and answer a question in class they normally wouldn't be able to.
I have one student named Kevin who is a brilliant math student, but his reading, he really does struggle. But by using the reader pen, he's able to scan the text, understand what is being asked, and solve that math problem perfectly.
The pen has helped me with a lot of hardships. I'm understanding more of the words and understanding more of the sounds that I didn't understand before.
It just levels the playing field. And it's giving our special needs students confidence where instead of them asking their peers for help and support, now some of their friends and peers are now asking them for support.
Okay. Can everyone hear me? I turned off my audio for the video. So, Kristen, is my volume okay?
Yes, you sound great. Thank you.
Okay. Sorry about that, everyone. We didn't anticipate that from our walkthrough. All right, here we go. So I love that video. And just in case you think you heard it wrong, she did say they had 200,000, not students, but 200,000 special ed students. And I call that the best case scenario because you could see they had 2 AT specialists. They had the speech-language pathologist speaking, the special ed teacher, the classroom teacher. This was really a team approach. And for those of you that are interested in the reading pen, if you can do something where you get everyone engaged and can get several pens to start with, that is absolutely the best case scenario. But that is not necessarily the scenario that you are going to confront. So I am going to show you what I consider not the best case scenario, or just a case study that that I was involved with last year. So I was asked to help out at a school that had not had a therapist since the previous April. So this was October of 2019. And I was going through the IEPs and reading them for the students that I was going to be picking up. And JS was in the 3rd grade. He had reading scores that were more than 1.5 years below grade level. Receptive and expressive language was also more than a year below grade level for areas like vocabulary, syntax, and following directions. And I noticed in his IEP, in the accommodation section, there was an accommodation for an optical scanner with voice output. It was only in the accommodations. It was not in the AT section. And the IEP was from 6 months before. And when I asked where the reading pen was, or the equivalent of the reading pen, it had not been purchased yet. So whoever had put it in as an accommodation either wasn't there anymore, there was not a name attached to it, and no one had taken kind of the responsibility to make sure it happened for this student. So he was pretty withdrawn in class. He was having some struggles with teammates and classmates, and he was also really struggling academically. So the building administrator had done a Google search and found a $99 scanning pen, and he wanted to buy that because it was cheaper. And so luckily, the pen in question did have voice output included. And also there was the need for a dictionary feature, and it was called ScanMark. The pen that he found for $99 required Wi-Fi, which would mean in any non-Wi-Fi environment, the student, one, wouldn't be able to use the pen, and two, never would be able to hear the written word. So I was kind of doing a side-by-side documentation of what the ReaderPen would offer that this student needed. And then thanks to Brian and Scanning Pen, I was able to get a ReaderPen on a 30-day trial. And so that 30 days gave me plenty of time to provide evidence of improvement for the student, to demonstrate the value of the pen to the student, to the teachers, and to support services. And the first thing I did is ask for some of the curriculum so that I could be having the student be engaged with the tasks that he was asking me to, that he was needing to do in the classroom. And once you show those teachers that you are interested in the vocabulary that they're trying to teach, and I know all of us don't feel like we have time to do that. We have our own goals, we have our own materials, but when you say to the teacher, do you have an extra copy of the third grade reader book? You will get an extra copy, and you will be able to support the language of the classroom and the language of learning. But the teachers, even without that, were very excited for this student to have another way to access text. So, oh no, we're going to shoot. This is not the version. Sorry, I'll go back to this one. I just want to give you a little feedback about the ReaderPen and how it went for this student. He was so excited when he read those first words that I set up for him that his eyes lit up. It was almost like I was handing him Harry Potter's magic wand. This little thing was reading words that were completely inaccessible to him. And he looked around the classroom, and he went to a poster and scanned some words, and he went to a schedule and he scanned some words. And he even scanned, there was the label on the plugged-in pencil sharpener. So he went over to that, and it was a curved surface, and he tried to scan that. Now, not all words came out right, and so I have this little slide, sometimes the word will be potato, but the reading pen will say potato, or PP exclamation point, OO, or otado. And that is especially at the beginning as the student is learning how to scan smoothly and quickly. Most of the time that resolves itself. And when it doesn't, I think it's all right to just laugh and say, for sure, Odato is not a word I know. What else could it be? And so take that, whatever the scanning pen says, and see if the child can come up with the word, from context. Worst case scenario, offer, our famous forced choice. So you can say, do you think the word is potato or asparagus? And then the kids can laugh and go, oh, definitely, it's potato. potato. They'll know it's not asparagus. So the last thing I want to say about this student, it was a 30-day loan period. I think I got the pen in mid-October, mid to late October. Brian might have given me a little extra time. So by the time, in fact, he did give me quite a bit of extra time. By the time that period was over, though, it was nearing Christmas, and the young man knew it was going to have to go back. And he said, did I think he could get the reading pen for a Christmas present? And so when a student in 3rd grade asks for a piece of reading technology as a Christmas present, you know that you have found something that can transform this student's experience in the classroom. And that's pretty powerful. So, a couple more definitions before I go to demoing the pen. So, the reading pen as assistive technology. So, assistive technology devices and services should be considered for all students with disabilities, regardless of type or severity of disabilities. So, for those of you that are special educators, you already know this. And students are not excluded from consideration for assistive technology for any reason, whether it's the type of disability, the age, the administrative concerns or costs. And that is not to discount that some forms of assistive technology are very expensive. An eye gaze speech generating device can be $12,000. And that is a lot of musical instruments, and that is a lot of other materials. There's only so much budget, and I understand how difficult it is to prioritize assistive technology at times. However, the reading pen itself is not high tech. I would consider it light tech, and it's $250. The other thing I wanted to say about costs is I always hang out and befriend the IT guy at the school. And if the IT guy or woman opens any closet for you as you're rooting around for other things that you might use for your students, you are going to find thousands, I suspect, or my experience has been, that you are going to find thousands of dollars worth of technology that is no longer used. And in the case of this school, there was all kinds of technology that had never been opened. So this is not a huge expense, and it really can be educationally life-changing for students. So the other piece is that assistive technology devices and services can be included in the IEP for 2 reasons. 1, as special ed or related service, and 2, as a supplementary aid or service. So AID, not AIDE. And so something that is a physical, like a pen or a speech generating device, is that number 2, it's a supplementary aid. In order to use that aid, especially if we're talking, let's say, about a speech generating device, you can't just dump it in the classroom and expect the child to pick it up and use it. And even the reading pen has a short curve where the child's going to learn to use it and learn to use the different features on it. One thing from the video, which I have found to be absolutely true, is students will just start playing with it. And features like the dictionary feature or features like read it again, they will hit all those buttons with no worries. And they will find those features that you haven't bothered looking at yet or you haven't had time to look at. So the technology, a mindset of students for technology is very engaged and very high, and they will figure things out. So that's very nice, comforting, I guess. Okay, so for those, there may be some people in the room who haven't that don't have access to the IEP, but might serve on the team as a classroom teacher, or might not have access to it when it's in the writing stage. I just want to remind you where the assistive technology piece is in the IEP. And of course, depending on your state, it might be someplace different. But in Texas, where I am now, I just want to show you that the assistive technology is number H, at least in the school that I was with, sandwiched between physical competencies and the individual family service plan, or the IFSP. And even though the student had the a reading pen described in the accommodation section, he did have no written in the assistive technology considerations. So does the student need assistive technology to receive free and appropriate education? That answer should be yes. The other place then where and then after yes, you can describe the uses of the pen or the value of the pen for the student for accessing his free and appropriate public education. Then in addition, I would include in the accommodation section a nod to the pen here. So for this student, you can see he had adjusted assignments across the curriculum. He had checking for understanding, which he needed checks for understanding, breaks, and increased wait time after questions are asked and before responses are given. So the next one, or the first one, should be access to the reading pen as needed for all written academic materials. And actually, that's all I want to say about that. Okay. A lot of the goals that we're going to look at today are third and fourth grade goals. And the reason I picked third and fourth grade is because we know that kindergarten through second, students are really learning to read. And the primary goal and activity is making sure they understand text. And so there's a lot of support for that. We get a lot of referrals, and we get a lot of referrals for learning disabilities between third and fourth grade, because at that level, the academics is really about reading to learn. So it is assumed that the student can read independently and can take information from the text. So for those students who are struggling with the text, they really get left behind in third and fourth grade. They may do all right with a lot of support, K1, 1, 2, and you as a speech pathologist are supporting their oral language skills and their literacy skills, but it's like a hammer coming down at third and fourth grade for a lot of these students. So I want to talk about goal modifications for a second. As SLPs, when we look at our goals, we're often focusing on listening and speaking, because really that's what the tests that we are giving are showing the deficits. But again, we know that when students are struggling with listening and speaking, it's not a big leap to start struggling with reading and writing. So let's just look at our objectives. They're most often related to receptive and expressive vocabulary, semantic knowledge, things like categories, part wholes, antonyms, synonyms, prefixes, you name it, and then story retell and story narrative. So take any goal that you have on any of your students with an IEP, and if it's more about the listening and the speaking, here's how I would recommend that you tweak it. So just as an example, at the end of X number of instructional weeks, given varying levels of cues and prompts, the student will correctly answer WH questions. We all have that as a goal from oral and written sources. If you just say we'll answer WH questions with 80% accuracy, the assumption there is that those are questions that you ask and the student answers verbally. So add written sources, keep your accuracy the same, drop your accuracy a little bit if you want to, and then include a text-to-speech reading pen should be available to assist with written texts as needed. That goal allows you to be much broader in your approach. And I have to say, I know you don't probably want to be much broader, except for that you're here today. We are doing a lot, and I don't want to discount how much we're doing at all. But if they are reading, if they have paper and pencil tasks, which most of them still do, we want to be supporting their learning for those paper and pencil tasks. Okay. And so just here's 2 more goals. These are not speech and language goals. These are taken directly from the Common Core state standards. And again, I know different states may refer to their state standards differently, so insert your own. But they tend to be something like this. Ask and answer questions to demonstrate understanding of a text, referring explicitly to the text as the basis for answers. This is a 3rd grade ELA text. So add your percentage of number of weeks and percentage of accuracy, and a text-to-speech reading pen should be available to assist with written text. Another one from 4th grade, determine the theme of a story, drama, or poem from details in the text and summarize the text. And I just want to also suggest that you put the reference to the text-to-speech reading pen at the end of that goal. You never want to write a goal with the text-to-speech reading pen will be used 70% of the time, or the text-to-speech reading pen will be used to ask and answer questions. The goal is still going to be about the student and the student's achievements, just like it would be for us using a speech generating device, but the method or the support is coming from the text-to-speech pen as needed. Okay. I think, well, here's one more goal. This is actually 2nd grade state standards about adjectives and adverbs. And this handout is from education.com. And I just want you to look at it for a minute and notice how many words your students in the 2nd grade, think about your 2nd grade students. Which of those words do you think they might know orally to be able to use in conversation when describing Harry Potter or a movie they've seen? Probably magical, maybe enchanted, powerful, dangerous. Maybe they know most of them. Maybe not intimidating, but most of them. How many of them do you think they could also easily decode? And if there is a disconnect between what they know verbally and what they can decode starting 2nd, but definitely 3rd, 4th grade on, we've got a problem for that student because they have things that they want to talk about and write about, but are really going to be struggling when they're reading about them. They may be skipping over a lot of words and struggling when they write them. So I think we're going to get out of the slide view for a minute, if we could, Kristen. Thank you. And like all technology, it tends not to work if you're doing a webinar. But I just want to show you the setup here. And typically you'd be doing the scanning pen on a flat surface and scanning horizontally. But for today, I'm going to be doing on a vertical surface. Here is the reading pen. That cursor shows me that it's ready to go. Typically, a student in a classroom would be having earbuds. I have it hooked up to an external speaker so that you can hear it when it reads. And I also use an external speaker if I'm showing it to students or I'm showing it to a teacher. I want everybody to hear it at the same time. It does have a tiny little speaker that you could listen to, but it's much better if you can hook it up to an external speaker. So let's go with charming and keep our fingers crossed. And now I'm scanning across.
Charming.
Charming. It had a tiny little glitch, but charming. Good. And now we're going to try intimidating because that is a complex word.
Comma, intimidating.
Intimidating. It's actually saying intimidating for me. And
intimidating.
Intimidating. It's giving a little glitch. I think that has to do with the cheap speaker that I'm using. So you can see that a student that is faced with this worksheet could definitely benefit from the reading pen. They could go through then and scan the whole sentence, the knight slayed the dragon, instead of single words, and then look for the word that they heard up there that would be good for knight. Was he brave? Was he magical? Was he powerful? They can only fill this worksheet in if they can understand and decode what words are on this worksheet. Okay. Kristen, can we go back to the next slide? Great. Okay. So I also just want to show you how to take a regular speech and language material that's all about oral language and kind of pump up the literacy base. So here's something, this one is from Teachers for Pay Teachers. I grabbed it when I was doing teletherapy with those school-based kids, and trying to think about ways to get them moving and engaged. I didn't have them run and find these things during therapy. I actually asked the mom to help them find them ahead of time and have them ready. But one thing you can do, and let's see. So go ahead and just keep this in your mind as a speech and language activity where we're looking for confrontation naming, then we're looking for descriptors, and we're looking for compare and contrast in a sentence, but none of those key vocabulary items have the word underneath. And supporting literacy means everything that can be text-based or have the equivalent to the word should be. So Kristen, go ahead. I'm going to have you go to full camera mode for a sec. So those keywords, let me show you on here. I had printed out, there we go, and cut out so that you can hide the word and the item around the room. This is if we were back in a classroom, but I have this tiny little backpack because for teletherapy, I hid things in the tiny little backpack and had the students bring their own backpack, which they weren't using for school. So if they find the word envelope, they may have already found envelope, but may not know that word, may not know how to decode it. I'm going to go ahead and scan it for you to hear.
Envelope.
Envelope. Okay. So the child can read the words, they can find the items, and then you can have all of that conversation. Kristen, if you can go back to the slide for me. I just want to add that here where it says make a sentence, even when the kids are first grade, I would have them write a sentence instead of just telling you a sentence. Gives you a sense of what they're writing. Confidence is, it can be invented spelling. Are there spaces between words? You don't have to be the handwriting expert, but seeing writing samples of children is a good idea. And having them create their own written sentence is also kind of part of our investing in our time and our students' time for the literacy puzzle. So anyway, so for this, it combines the ReaderPen with traditional language goals. I printed and cut out the vocabulary words for scanning if needed. If the student recognized the word, then they could put the flashlight right next to the flashlight, the toothbrush right next to the toothbrush. If they wanted to hear the word and then put it next to the item, that's how they did it. Took a little bit of time on my part. It did not take a lot of time away from what I was doing with the students. So, okay, next slide.
Elizabeth, I'm just going to give you a time check too. We're about 45 minutes in.
Yeah, I saw it. I don't think there's too many more slides. I'm going to go much more quickly. I'll just do one more scanning demo we'll just leave the window as is. I suspect most of you have things like silly sentences. And I just want to point out this one is the cat, which your students probably do not need help reading. Played violin. They may or may not recognize the violin. And, oh, thank you. And even though that this is hard plastic, the reading pen will pick up this plastic. This is the last one I'm going to do for you so we can get through these slides.
VO.
Oopsie. And I might say, gosh, is it a VO? That just means I didn't scan the whole word.
Violin.
Sorry, violin. That's as close as we're going to get right now. It will scan better if you're on a surface. Kristen, go ahead and go back to the slides. All right. So we're going to go just a little bit faster. And I'm going to let you handle things in the chat box. Here's another example of a fourth grade reading activity. Again, your students could be super interested in fantasy and graphic novels and humor. Can you help them read the definition that they're going to be responsible for in class? Can the reading pen help them know what that definition is? So they're not just excited about science fiction, but they actually have the skills to be able to talk about it and understand it as a genre. Last type of text that I want to just mention is, the classroom textbook. I've already said, ask for your own copy for your students. Sometimes a student has left the district and the teacher can give you that copy. There's so much vocabulary that is in these textbooks. If you haven't seen one in a while, this is definitely worth doing. So this is actually 5th grade, book 2. So that means it's, maybe 3 months in. Locomotives, chugged, gadgets, phonograph, sputtered, I think, flop, incandescent, cylinder, and patents. So even what do all those words have to do with each other? Because they really came from one single focus in the curriculum. Okay, and the last one I want to show you is this is a page from an English language arts book 1, in fact. And if we look at it, words about stories, certainly that's something that we are very engaged with. But the text itself, climax, dialogue, forward, and prose, and even the category headings, word, meaning, and context sentences. The vocabulary is so rich and complex at this grade level. So I want you to kind of take a guess. You can write it in the chat or not. I'll tell you in a minute. I would not have guessed even close to the correct grade level for this page. Okay, everybody have a grade level in their mind? This is from a 1st grade textbook. This is Houghton Mifflin 1st grade Texas textbook. So it really opened my eyes to what the expectations were for some of my language delayed students and why they were struggling. And they go quickly through these textbooks. I would have thought third, maybe late 2nd, but it is 1st grade and early 1st grade. Okay. I just want to remind you, we're talking about paper because the scanning pen is for paper. Certainly when the students are on tablets, we want them to be using the word option on tablets. There's a lot of research that shows when students have access to the words that are struggling readers and the sentences, their reading improves. It does not hurt their reading to have things read to them. And many students are not coming from a language reading rich environment. So having access to the written word, the spoken word translated from the text at home can be very, very important. Okay. Last thing I want to show you is, again, most of us, I would be surprised if maybe all of us don't have at least 1 or 2 students on our caseload with category knowledge. Okay, vocabulary knowledge is important. How you categorize it has everything to do with how you can store and retrieve language. So category knowledge is incredibly important. Here's super duper word joggers for categories. It's true. A lot of students might not recognize asparagus, and they might not know that that is a chunk of cheese unless that's the way their mother is getting them cheese. We more tend to see our cheeses here in nachos. So this is one way to work on categories. I don't see any words here, so that would be an improvement to me. Always give the word if you can. But we've talked a lot about the reading. I want to just go back to writing for a minute. I asked a 5th grade student to give me 5 items in this mystery category over here, where you can look at it. In the interest of time, I'm going to go to the next slide, but just take a second and see if you recognize any of these words. And also, if this is a 5th grader, and this is his list of 5 words, we can kind of imagine that he is a struggling reader. He was significantly behind in reading and writing and was kind of considered by the teacher to be really not even there because he struggled so much. Okay. He actually had some high interests and he was doing nobly based on how difficult it was for him to read and write. So the category was places to go on vacation. And no one in this room has probably gone on a vacation in more than a year. So I want to say this is places to go on vacation in Texas. So now that you know it's Texas, for those of you here, you might recognize Slitterbahn, which is a water park, Houston, Dallas, Six Flags, and Disney. I see this. I know I need to advocate for an OT and also for a reading pen for this student. Okay. So really that, we've got 8 minutes. I'm going to let you, because I know Kristen is sending you these slides. These are the answers, which I think you probably would have figured out for yourself about 3 or more, objective 1, 3 or more key features of a reading pen. Objective 2, how to develop curriculum-based language and goals that support text-to-speech. And some ways to use the reading pen in puzzle strips, on language-based board games, and in things like scavenger hunts. You don't actually probably need any help from me to think about ways that you can add a little bit more literacy support and maybe the reading pen into your activities. So I think we're going to move to questions, comments, and you can tell us in the chat where you're dying to go on vacation. And thank you very much for coming today. Kristen, it's all you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Every time I hear you talk, I learn a little bit more about writing good goals, which is so tricky. So thank you for all that information.
You're welcome.
We had quite a few questions in the chat that we addressed in the chat, but there are a few extra ones. So Kathleen wants to know, do you find any hesitance or resistance with reading teachers regarding the use of the pen when students are younger?
Okay, so let me see if I understand the question right. Resistance from the students not wanting to use the pen, is that the essence of the question?
I'm guessing she means resistance from the reading teacher regarding.
Well, that's a great question. So certainly there's an issue of not wanting to step on anybody's toes. So I would bring the reading teacher into it from the beginning. My personal experience has been that the reading teachers are like, oh my God. I mean, they're not with the student all the time. So having that option for I would approach it as with a reluctant reading teacher is how can we help this kid get more word knowledge and get more confidence in the classroom when we can't support him or her. And I think that asking the reading teacher to help come up with those struggle words can be very useful. I would absolutely go to the reading teacher first. And in fact, the reading teacher in this particular setting felt like she wasn't allowed to see the IEP, even though there's all kinds of crazy things in every state, I realize. So the reading teacher is our dearest friend. And I would, whatever it takes, if you need to bring her some snacks and do a little presentation and say, what else could we do? And how could this support? I think they're going to jump on board. It does not have to be the speech pathologist. I think anyway, we can get somebody else to do it, but we want to support it. that would be great. That would be fabulous. So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, thank you. No, it's a great question. Absolutely. I'm going to toss it to Brian. Brian, we had questions about the dictionary, translation, and insurance. Can you address those questions?
I did see that. I saw a couple questions out there. So Holly and Kathleen, thank you so much for asking those questions. First of all, I just wanted to quickly just talk about the pen itself and clarify. So the pen itself is a reader pen that does text to speech, right? With that, there are translation opportunities. And what we mean by that is we do have another pen very similar to this. It's called the Lingo pen. And we use this with a lot of our ESL, ELL programs that we work with in districts. And the way that it works, it does not translate a word-for-word sentence. It translates selected words that the student may be struggling with. So it is a language acquisition tool that is meant to help the student acquire English as their primary or second language in the education system. The other thing, as far as insurance, I have heard of a few people that have used Medicaid. It does have to come off of a doctor's recommendation and signature. I'm not an expert in that, but I do know that it has worked for a few people. So that is something that you can look into if that's the route you go. But we do work with a lot of different grants. In fact, on our website, we have a list of resources and grants that can be utilized for the purchase of the pens. And with the pen itself, as you can see, it's small, it's portable. I did see one of the messages or questions that was brought up is you have these other resources, the online programs, the built-in computer software programs and things like that. Where does the pen play in this? Kristen kind of answered that. This is something that if you are using any type of paper, book, assessment, anything like that, you could use this for that. The thing that we really love about this, especially with kids that I put it in their hands, is it doesn't require any external resources as far as internet, a secondary device or anything like that. It is all self-contained. So if they have this thing charged and they were sitting in a cave out in the middle of the mountains, they would still be able to read with this pen because it does not need anything else on it. Some of the things that actually make this really great and that I wanted to kind of talk about just to kind of follow up rather than do it a demo, because I think Liz has done a wonderful job with that, kind of walking us through that. Is this has a few extra options on it, such as our scan to file options. You can actually plug this in to your computer and scan documents directly back to a Google Doc, a Word doc, any of those type of things that you'd be using in your classroom or your students would be using at home. So they can leverage with that. It also allows you to scan directly back to the pen so that you can review what that student has been reading or going through later, including in the dictionary. The built-in dictionaries has a history. So if a student gets stuck on something and is looking up something, wants to know the words, you can use this as an indicator to go back through and see where they may have struggled. So you may see one word that's on there a few extra times. Okay, well, what are they struggling with? Is it the double consonant? Is it the double vowel? Or those words sometimes get confusing, especially for a language learner. And so you're able to work with that student. Another thing that's built in here is a built-in recorder option to where they can practice speech components. This is a big deal here in Texas for me with our TELPAS, students, our English language proficiency students. They're able to practice their speech components on the TELPAS, which is the state proficiency test. There's actually a recording portion where they have to speak. So this gives them an option to practice that ahead of time and get familiar with it, and be able to play it back and also play what they scanned to hear how they sound in comparison. So, and of course, it is a text reader. Ultimately, end of the day, that's what it was designed for. That's what it's built for. So it'll fit in any program or anybody struggling with any type of literacy, whether it's dyslexia, language, low vision, ADD, anything that they come across, this will assist in.
Nice. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Elizabeth, any final thoughts as we head out today?
Maybe just that this is actually a great company to work for. I asked a question on a Friday night to their tech support, just kind of out of curiosity and because I didn't know the answer. And Monday morning, I had an answer. So again, I think there's a lot of resources on their website. I think if you can think of a student and do the free trial, you might learn a lot and enjoy it. And thanks for coming on a Tuesday. I hope everybody gets through the last of the year safely and yeah, with a sense of humor.
Oh, exactly.
So
Brian?
just really quick, I did want to say I did place in here a link, and I think Kristen also has placed the link. I encourage you guys all to take advantage of the trial. This is going to give you a free 30-day trial. There's no strings attached. At the end of the trial, you decide if you want to keep it, or if not, you send it back. But I would identify, a student, like Liz said, and decide what you want to accomplish with them. What are the challenges? The other thing that's nice about the pen is it's very incognito. It keeps the student in class with their peers, so it creates that inclusive environment because they can sit and read with their earbuds in, and they don't have to be pulled out for sheltered or any other instructional practices that takes them away from their peers. So that's important to students, so we all know that. So again, thank you both for getting on here and helping us with this, and thank you all for attending. Look for an email that will come out along with the information and link, and we'll have the representative in the area contact each of you. So thank you again for attending us, and have a great day.
Thanks, everyone. There isn't a better year to wish you a happy Teacher Appreciation Week for everything that you've done this year and every year. Thanks, and have a wonderful end of the school year and happy summer.